Tonight on CFTK-TV, the start of the demolition of the Mills Memorial Hospital. Victoria sees an increase of tourism during the spring break, and Prime Minister Carney meets with those of the European Union.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damian Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. We begin tonight's cast with the process of saying goodbye to a longtime staple of the Northwest landscape, which has now started. Demolition began on Mills Memorial Hospital today, and CFTK-TV was there on site. Here's Jaylene Matthews with more.
Despite dealing with pushback from some community groups, the demolition of the Mills Memorial Hospital did begin today.
The end of an era and the beginning of a new one as the excavator begins to plow through the 60-year-old structure. Although there was some pushback from community groups on the viability of repurposing the old Mills Memorial Hospital.
I feel like we're not being fiscally responsible with tax dollars. I think we're throwing tax money into landfills. That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Ultimately, it was deemed that the building itself was not salvageable. A hospital representative did tell CFTK-TV that any useful equipment, including the CT scanner, was removed and repurposed from the building. The new hospital is more than twice the size of the previous facility and has 82 beds, private rooms, a bigger emergency department space, including 2 trauma bays, 6 stretcher bays, pediatric care space, and 4 operating rooms, as well as the latest diagnostic imaging equipment. Northern Health states demolition will make way for much-needed parking. For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Now, back in February, the Terrace RCMP got some information that helped them with a drug trafficking investigation that saw them looking into a residence on Keith Avenue. And only a few days ago, Terrace's Crime Reduction Unit executed a search warrant on that residence, and they ended up arresting a total of 7 people at the scene. The unit also ended up seizing items like suspected cocaine, prohibited firearms, ammunition, rifle magazines, along with several other unspecified weapons. All of the individuals that were arrested at the residence later got released, but this investigation is still ongoing at this point in time, and the Terrace RCMP are forwarding all the results of the investigation that they've accumulated so far to the Crown Council so that they can consider additional charges. In terms of sports news, the Koi Cup tournament schedule has been released, with the 4 teams being announced as well. The Robin will start next Tuesday up until Thursday night, then the semifinals on Friday, and the finals will be played on Saturday evening. In terms of the Northwest, the host in the Prince Rupert Rampage will be in action during the evenings in the round robin, and the Terrace River Kings will be playing at 4 p.m. other than their game against the Rampage on Wednesday night. The other teams from around the province are the Rossland Warriors, who play south of the province, and the Dawson Creek Canucks, who are from the northeast part of British Columbia. And breaking news out of the Middle East, after 6 weeks of peace between Israel and Hamas, this morning saw more than 400 Palestinians killed, along with hundreds more injured. According to the Israeli Prime Minister, the attack was made to release their hostages and would increase with military force as well. Here's Genevieve Beauchemin of CTV News with more on this unfortunate story.
Drones and explosions shattered 6 weeks of relative calm in Gaza. Israeli strikes killed hundreds, according to local health authorities. Palestinians sheltering in a school say a bomb hit part of the complex where families were huddling. Some feared this shattered any hope for peace. People were sleeping peacefully, she says, and they woke up to death. The White House was consulted and voiced support for the strikes. Israel says it took aim at military targets and that the assault came after Hamas's repeated refusal to release the rest of the hostages. The Israeli defense minister said that if Hamas did not immediately release all the kidnapped men and women, the gates of hell would open. Fear of an all-out war gripped some of the families of the roughly 24 hostage believed to still be alive.
We need a ceasefire to release my brothers.
Israel is trying to get its hostages back.
Montreal Rabbi Asher Jacobson recently met with families of hostages in Israel. He says applying pressure to Hamas is a double-edged sword.
If you do nothing, you gain nothing, and then you have to go through this attack and target Hamas militants and leaders, and there's always collateral damage. We've seen, sadly.
Messages against the strikes were scrawled on the gates at McGill University and promptly erased, and a protest is planned in Toronto. Ibrahim Mina now lives in Halifax, but many of his family members are in Gaza.
It's very scary, especially what happened right now early in the morning at the wake of dawn when this attack has happened.
Now many are bracing to see what will happen with the talks, whether peace can be worked out.
And moving on to headlines from around the country, Prime Minister Carney was just in Europe this past weekend to prioritize the relationship between Canada and the European Union, with the UK and France in particular. Michael Couture was over in London to report on the matter.
At a time when Canada's faith in its closest allies has been tested, Prime Minister Mark Carney made a pilgrimage to Paris, hoping to renew those ties. French President Emmanuel Macron stood shoulder to shoulder with Carney, vowing to work together as the U.S. becomes more protectionist.
Nous sommes plus forts ensemble.
We are stronger together, says Macron, better able to ensure the respect of our interests and sovereignty. Similar support came from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
To sovereign allies.
Still, Carney says Canada doesn't need anyone to come to our aid.
I don't think one needs to respond to every comment about another country. Look, we can stand up for ourselves. It's Canada strong. We can stand up for ourselves.
Besides words of support, Starmer and Macron offered little else, and opposition leader Pierre Poilievre believes that makes this trip a bust.
I would have liked to seen Mr. Carney come home with a natural gas supply agreement signed with the French, the way the Qataris have done.
The U.S. had threatened global tariffs on a number of allies starting April 2nd. And while Carney had campaigned on a dollar-for-dollar response in counter-tariffs, he now says Canada can't punch back as hard.
There's a limit to matching these tariffs dollar for dollar, given the fact that our economy is a tenth the size of the United States.
The threat of Donald Trump hangs over this trip, and Carney's team says having a call with the U.S. president remains a priority for the Prime Minister when he returns home. But before he heads back to Ottawa, Carney will stop in Nunavut to reaffirm Canada's sovereignty over the Arctic.
Coming up next, Victoria is seeing an increase in tourism from Canadians and Americans. Welcome back to CFTK-TV. Well, it's a popular time for tourism, especially for those in families with spring break now underway. And many are going to Victoria, not only for the warmer weather, but to prop up the Canadian dollar as well. Yvonne Raymond from CTV has more down on the island.
Victoria's Inner Harbor bustles with visitors on day one of spring break.
What are you doing here?
Girls trip! And this year, trends appear changed.
We wanted to travel somewhere in Canada this year, and we had come to Victoria a couple of times before 2018 and had lots of fun. So we wanted to visit again since it had been so long.
We're gonna go to the museum, the Bug Museum.
Were there any considerations to go to the U.S.?
No, not for a second.
The sentiment is widespread amid a trade war. In February, the number of Canadians crossing the border was down 20% year over year.
I feel very patriotic when I'm here. All the Canadian flags and the Parliament buildings and stuff, it's awesome.
I've been trying to buy as much Canadian as I can.
I think it's good to keep tourism here and kind of boost the economy a bit too, because with tariffs, they're trying to increase their GDP.
The Greater Victoria Hotel Association is noticing an uptick in bookings, not just from Canadians, Americans too.
The dollar is certainly helping us attract Americans, particularly from our close neighboring states, where we're, as always for decades and centuries, we're happy to have them visit.
Buskers love Uncle Sam at $1.40 plus to the Canadian dollar.
Hotel reps say the outlook adds to a subtle shift in March travel.
We've seen the last couple of years, particularly since COVID, that we get more spring break travel from regional markets who come do something different and visit Victoria.
Pre-bookings are way up compared to last year.
Sightseeing operator Prince of Wales joins the industry, keen to see how the numbers unfold.
We love showing the locals their backyard and showing them the wonder of Wales.
Its Big Boats launch March 28th. Yvonne Raymond, CTV News, Victoria.
And the on-again, off-again presence of dust advisories in northwestern BC has seen yet another swing as 2 more of them were put into place. Once again, Houston was one of the communities that was hit with an advisory, although this time they were joined by Burns Lake instead of Smithers. And just like before, high concentrations of coarse particulate matter was listed as the defining reason for the advisories once again being made active. Now we take a look at our local weather forecast for tonight and for the week ahead. On the north coast, tonight should be cloudy with periods of rain beginning after midnight sometime. Winds should be coming from the southeast at 30 kilometers per hour, increasing to 90 over the coastal sections, and the temperature should be steady near 6 degrees. And for this week, expect steady temperatures for next week with rain and showers going back and forth. The high will be 8 degrees on Friday, where there is a chance of showers, and the low will be Thursday and Friday night at 3 degrees. In Terrace and Kitimat, tonight should be cloudy with a 30% chance of rain showers that could change to a chance of flurries later in the evening. Winds should be coming from the south, changing to the northeast along with a low of 0 degrees. This week will maybe see some flurries tomorrow and a couple of days of showers, then a couple days of rain or snow when the weekend rolls around. The high will be 7 degrees tomorrow and Sunday, while the low will be 0 degrees on Friday night. In the Bulkley Valley, tonight should be partially cloudy with light winds at 15 kilometers per hour with a low of -8 and a wind chill of -11 overnight. For this week's forecast, there is a decent chance of flurries tomorrow, showers Thursday, and then sun on the weekend. The high will be 9 degrees on Sunday and the low will be -6 on Friday night. And now we turn our attention to our roadside report from around the Northwest. For additional updates, check out drybc.ca. Highway 16 has snowing on Haida Gwaii, utility work west of Skeena, construction north of Usk, and utility work in Endako. Highway 37 has roadside brushing north of Lake Hells Lake and slippery sections. Highway 37A has pavement patching and slushy sections. The Nishka Highway has slippery sections, and Telegraph Creek Road has compact snow and muddy sections. And these are what the cameras were looking like from around the Northwest. Still to come, despite the carbon tax being cancelled by Carney, there is still more work to be done in Parliament. Hello again. Well, we now turn to our financial segment, where the town of Smithers has announced that they have officially adopted their half-a-decade-long economic development plan that is set to cover the town from 2025 until 2030 at a recent town council meeting. The plan was able to come together due to funding from the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program from the BC government, and the plan also contains 5 main goals that Smithers will look to achieve in the next 5 years, and they include pursuing economic diversification, improving business retention and undergoing expansion, securing additional land supply, and enabling land-based investment while also enhancing health services, housing diversity, recreation amenity, and placemaking. The entirety of the extensive 5-year plan, including a full breakdown of all their goals, can be seen on the Town of Smithers website. At a recent special council meeting, the District of Kitimat Council was shown a presentation that showed a gap analysis report of their ongoing development approvals process. The report went on to inform the council that there were some discoveries that should help the district make improvements to their future development processes, and another report that should be even more in-depth is set to come sometime in the near future as well. The meeting also saw the council put forward a motion involving the North Central Local Government Association's annual general meeting that will advocate for the BC government to opt into a program called the Speculation and Vacancy Tax Program. And if the association accepts the motion, it will be submitted to the Union of BC Municipalities to see if they'll endorse it to the provincial government. And with Mark Carney wiping the carbon tax as his first order of business as Prime Minister of Canada, the Conservatives have still made it known that the carbon pricing law has not been repealed in Parliament. Rachel Aiello has more over in Ottawa.
At a steel plant in Eastern Ontario, today Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre took his pledge to scrap the carbon tax a step further.
A common sense, Canada First Conservative government will repeal the entire carbon tax, including the federal backstop that requires provinces impose industrial taxes.
Going beyond promising to repeal the consumer carbon price, the Conservative leader said he'd remove the price on big emitters, such as the natural resource and food production sectors, to help industries being hit by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs.
I once again say to Donald Trump, why would you go after these people?
This policy pledge comes after Mark Carney, in his first act as Prime Minister, signed a directive on Friday to end the consumer carbon tax through regulations while upholding the industrial portion.
It's my honor, on behalf of my colleagues, to sign this one.
That move sparked heated debate over the weekend, with Conservatives questioning the photo op and process, noting the carbon pricing law has not been repealed in Parliament. Today, when asked if he still thinks keeping the tax on industrial polluters is viable amid Trump's threats, Carney suggested other nations we want to trade with want to see Canada keep it on.
We have the opportunity to diversify trade. Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the European Union? Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the United Kingdom? Guess what one of the requirements will be to diversify trade to emerging Asia? To have a form of price on carbon.
Only 4 provinces and territories apply the federal industrial carbon price: Prince Edward Island, Nunavut, Manitoba, and the Yukon. The rest operate their own carbon pricing systems. While Poilievre says he'd expand clean technology tax credits instead, analysis from the Canadian Climate Institute suggests Canada's industrial carbon pricing, if maintained, would do more than any other policy to cut emissions over the next 5 years.
If you're going to eliminate the industrial carbon price, then we are going to have a major hole in our climate policy.
Asked what climate targets a Conservative government would commit to, Poilievre was non-committal, saying he would treat reducing emissions as a global problem. Rachel Aiello, CTV News, just west of Hawkesbury, Ontario.
And now we turn our attention to the stock market, where we have a mix of everything today and not a big change in money and commodities. The Canadian dollar is up 2/100ths of a penny. The price of gold is up $34.70. Oil is down 62 cents. Natural gas is up 3 cents. And aluminum is up $2.50. In Toronto, the TSX is down 79 points. The Venture Index is up 0.65. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 260, and NASDAQ is down 304. Still ahead, the U.S. government releases a video showing the details of deportation on criminal gangs. Welcome back to our final segment. Well, hundreds of gang members from El Salvador have been deported from the United States, and the U.S. government went the extra mile to document the process. Here's Joy Malbin with CTV News.
The video shared by El Salvador's president looks like a Hollywood movie. More than 200 alleged Venezuelan gang members paraded around, shackled, their heads shaved. The U.S. paid El Salvador $6 million to imprison them. More than half were deported under a rare wartime law, the Alien Enemies Act, that Trump invoked for the first time since the Second World War, giving him sweeping powers.
They invaded our country, so this isn't, in that sense, this is war. I can tell you this, these were bad people. That was a bad group of, as I say, hombres.
A federal judge blocked the move, ordering the planes to turn around. That didn't happen. The administration denies it defied the judge's order, saying the planes were already out of U.S. airspace.
The president used his authority under the Alien Enemies Act to deport foreign terrorists. Tren de Aragua is now a designated foreign terrorist organization.
It's all part of an escalating crackdown on illegal immigration as promised by Donald Trump and his new border czar.
We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
Civil liberties groups accuse the White House of abusing wartime powers when the U.S. isn't even at war.
I do think we are slipping closer and closer to a constitutional crisis. Criticizing federal judges, saying they don't have authority. I think we're on dangerous ground here in the United States.
Late today, the judge scolded Trump's Justice Department, demanding to know why his orders were ignored as Trump continues to push the boundaries of his presidential powers.
And a larger than usual measles outbreak is making its way around Ontario, where it has gone to the point where unvaccinated children are now being sent home if they do not have their shots up to date. Here's Heather Wright of CTV News, who is our final story of the day.
Thousands of Ontario students have been suspended from school, with thousands more facing similar discipline due to missing or out-of-date vaccination records. And while these reviews into vaccine records began months ago, they come as measles cases rise in several parts of the country.
The real issue here is that there's pockets of under-vaccinated individuals and communities with under-vaccinated pockets in the country. And when measles enters those pockets, it exploits them. It's one of the most transmissible infections out there.
The suspensions were handed down after letters were sent home by multiple school boards asking parents and guardians to update their child's records or provide a valid exemption. Vaccination rates in Ontario have been dropping over the years, with Ontario Public Health reporting that last school year, just 70% of 7-year-olds were fully vaccinated against the measles, well below the 95% needed for herd immunity. And while many people recover from the virus, it can cause serious complications.
If the virus can spread into your lungs, you can get a very severe pneumonia. If it spreads into your central nervous system, into your brain, it can actually cause brain damage, and that's where the fatal cases really come from.
Last month in Texas, an unvaccinated child died after contracting measles as an outbreak there continues to spread. Officials point to a number of factors behind declining vaccine rates. Many people missed vaccines during the pandemic. There has been a spread of vaccine misinformation and a shortage of family doctors here in Canada.
They go and see a family doc, and family doctor would ask you about your vaccine status. We don't have that connection anymore.
Officials are encouraging people to check their vaccine records or reach out to public health if records aren't available.
And a rise in measles cases is not unique to North America. According to the World Health Organization, cases in Europe doubled last year to the highest levels in 25 years. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
And that will be all for our newscast tonight. Thank you very much for watching and have a good evening.